Hey, welcome back to Miniature Drama. Blah. Wow, mouth isn't working tonight. It must be because it's April Fool's. Welcome back to Miniature Dragon
Right.
Comic Review, live from the land of hipsters, grunge music, and Kurt Cobain, Seattle, Washington. As always, I'm your host and the number one hunted assassin in the galaxy, Daniel Doc Gentry, escaping from the clutches of hell to join me, one of our gurus, Woody, while Alex is on location on secret assignment. Welcome, Woody.
Yes. Hi.
I'm glad you can make it. We realized it was Easter when we tried to get some guests on the show.
Yeah. This is I don't know how successful this episode's going to be because we were trying to have a female comic creator that I work with on. She couldn't make it because of the holiday, and now we're stuck with our feminist episode with no feminists on. So I guess we'll see how that one goes.
I think we can pull this off. I don't think you.
Yeah.
And there's nothing that says you have to be a female to be a feminist.
Some feminists might disagree.
We'll find out how terrible we are at it, though.
Yes.
But just to start off for everybody, depending on what you celebrate today, happy April Fool's and happy Easter.
Yes.
I hope that everybody's having a good one and that there's lots of candy and kids are having a good time. And at least one person asks, "What is this bunny rabbit that lays eggs thing have to do with Easter?"
I have asked that one a few times myself.
Just as I feel like as a precursor to this, I really need to mention that today's episode is going to be, pictures are going to be a little bit more lewd than normal. I know we try to keep this to be more of a family-oriented show, but we have to deal with what we've got. So I apologize for what that is. But anyways, let's get started. Huh?
All right.
1 minute intros are weird. I just want to say that.
Well, which one would you like to start with, Doc?
Let's do Star Wars Dr. Aphra number 1.
Dr. Aphra, yes. Okay, so Dr. Aphra is a character. This one actually interested me a bit because it's the first series published by Marvel about a Star Wars character that did not exist before in the previous canon. So this is a character who appeared in the previous Darth Vader series, I think Vader Down, and was some archaeologist that Vader had co-opted into basically forced to help him in his mission. And then apparently she was popular enough that they gave her own series, which is still going. And I actually rather enjoyed the first issue. It was a little disjointed, but I felt like it did a pretty good job of filling you in on what was going on. You didn't necessarily have to have seen the character before, and did a pretty competent introduction to this character and her life and the the lovable rogue type that she's supposed to be.
Yeah, no. I'll tell you one thing I liked about it was it felt Star Warsy without feeling Star Warsy, and I don't know how better to describe that. What I mean by that is not your same lightsabers, Jedi versus Sith, Republic versus Empire. It's this brand new thing, and I think they did really well separating themselves from the Star Wars universe while still adapting into the Star Wars universe and making it like that.
Yeah, it that's one of the things for me is that I have a hard time personally separating the Jedi and the Sith from Star Wars, because that's what entranced me as a kid was the quote unquote laser swords and the adventures, Obi-Wan Kenobi and Luke and Vader and all that. And so when you see a story where it doesn't focus on the Force at all, in fact, and just deals on some other part of that universe, the Jedi is not the main character and the Force doesn't even factor into the story at all, and then it's well executed, that's really cool.
No, yeah. And the art is definitely above average. This is, I usually start off with this too, even though you say it doesn't make a difference. It is a Marvel comic. It was started in 2016. Like you said, it's still going. We're in 20 issues right now. And what I mean by that is, in a lot of these comics, we've talked about this before, where they have the deadlines that Marvel and DC do. They really put a tax on some of the artists, and sometimes it's wanting in the art. This is what I mean by above average is there's nothing else to base this off of except for a side character that ended up being popular in another, in the Darth Vader series.
Yeah.
And it's super really unique and really well done for not having another reference material.
Yeah, and also one thing that kind of threw me off a second there, was I'm reading the story, and then suddenly it ends. I'm like, wait, that seemed really quick. and then and then apparently they go. It's like it was divided into a part 1 and a part 2, where part 1, the part 2 kind of just suddenly throws you into her history, and you basically get this second story, which fills in the rest of the context for what's happening in the first part, and it initially feels really disjointed. You don't know what's going on. Then suddenly it's like, oh, this is actually a complete package. It's like I never would have thought to tell a story that way, but it worked really well, and it actually gave me a lot more interest in the character doing it that way, because suddenly you also, if you're stepping in it brand new and you aren't familiar, hadn't read the previous Darth Vader series, it actually does a really good job of like filling in all the pieces so you can identify with the character and really kind of get a clue what's going on.
Yeah, this story is very unique too. This is not something I've ever read that anything near what they're doing with this story, which for me is one of the big things. We don't always talk about these the stories. Alex is a big person. He'll tell you about like how it feels similar. It's kind of not gimmicky, cookie cutter. And this one definitely it did not feel like another Star Wars series. And as somebody who just started Starfinder, I was really excited to have something that was based in a universe that I know and I love that had nothing to do with the things that I know and love. So now it expands on this. Hey, look, there's other people in the galaxy.
Yeah. And there's actually another thing that I rather liked was that one of the criticisms of the prequel trilogy was the heavy emphasis on the politics of the galaxy, where that's a whole other debate whether or not that was good or bad, or how that could have been better. But I thought it was rather interesting that that other than the action sequence at the beginning, where you initially have this first impression that the character is a complete scumbag, and then find out it was actually not that case at all. But then to have a storyline where like 90% of the plot in the book is entirely political, or at least that kind of a story, and yet it worked and was well executed. And like where the action does not drive the story, it's completely secondary, and that was really neat to see somebody actually pull that off.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're a little over on that one, barely because we're both Star Wars fans, and that's how we roll. So we're gonna go to the second comic, which I know this one is one that is up for debate, and I want to just apologize. It's just what it's called, so nobody can get mad at me. But Bitch Planet #1.
Right. Okay.
This one was is Image. Yeah. It's publication, and I found out this is free on, what is it, the program that you use?
Comixology. Yeah, the first issues are often free for series, particularly ones where they really want to get you into it.
Well, this one says, I thought it was interesting that it was on that. It's Image. A lot of images on there I saw. Image publications.
Oh, absolutely.
And this was released in 2014 with 18 issues.
Yeah.
So, 18 issues is quite a bit. It means it had a good following. So I just want to apologize for my personal opinions of what's going to come up.
Well, this particular series had a lot of hype when it first came out. So I checked out the first issue, and it's by Kelly Sue DeConnick, who is she is basically well known for having kind of a feminist agenda in comics. And I had discovered it because I was listening to this podcast with these three girls that were reviewing comics and interviewing celebrities, and I thought, great way to get information. But it was interesting listening to Kelly Sue DeConnick talk about it, because she definitely, it's a story that she has a lot of passion for, and something that was very interested her. But it was also definitely something that was pushing an agenda, and it basically focuses on this version of Earth's future where there's a very strong patriarchy in charge, and women have no rights, and it follows basically a group of women who get thrown tossed off on a prison planet for various reasons. One of them apparently volunteered. I never really found out. Even in the first issue, you don't find out why that is. But there's another woman there who basically was sent to prison because she pissed off her husband, and then he went and had an affair. And apparently, in this society, it's legal just to get rid of your wife. And
he didn't want to. That's kind of in that story too.
Yeah.
That she got arrested for doing that. You're absolutely right. You're going where it was kind of set. But the interesting part to me about that was it was not set to that part of that story was not like he did that. It was like it was done and he was trying to stop that.
Well, that's the way it looked. Well, the thing, okay, so, I mean, the thing is he has his original wife and then immediately turn around, divorce, like has an affair, divorces his wife, and gets a new wife, and the entire, like, God, it's like, I might as well let's just lay it on the line. Basically, it has a bait and switch they do, where it looks like he's trying to get his wife out of prison when it actually turns out that the new wife got arrested by mistake. And it's the whole thing is to basically paint the picture of how horrible the society is. But the part that I have a problem with it is that in the interview, Kelly Sue DeConnick all but admitted that the entire point of the series was to create literally a twisted reflection of our Earth the way it is now, not a twisted future. Like that's what she said, is like she was trying to bring attention to issues that she thinks are going on today. And it's the problem I have with a story like this is, yes, there are parts of the world where stuff like this does happen. We certainly have a society where women don't always get the same pay and the same treatment. But, you also have a woman who could become president, regardless of whether or not she should. That's a whole other debate. But, like, we almost had a woman president. And when you put out a story like this, like, as a writer, I think you should do stuff that you're passionate about. But then for me, where I am definitely not on the side of whatever she's complaining about, and I read the comic, and I find it completely alienating. And it's clearly not written for me.
I think you're hitting on a point, which is that there are real problems that we could write about that you could put in this comic book. And do what you did, which is go above and beyond what, you exasperate the problem, make it bigger than what it is.
Yeah.
And you get somewhere with that. And then there's the other stuff that up for debate. I love when people bring up the women making less than men, because I work in the medical field, which in my part of the field is dominated by women.
Yeah.
And I always walk around, and I'm not a doctor, but I'm always asking the doctors, I'm like, how much do you make? Because I think I need to file a report since we work in the same place. Only because people bring it up. Now, I do think there's unfair treatment, all this other stuff, and it doesn't matter where you sit on the issue. If you're going to write a comic book for people and you want to bring issues to light for that, I agree with you that it should be one of those.
Yeah.
The story premise is really good. It really is.
Yeah.
The setup of this planet that these women get shipped to, and what Woody was saying was this planet where it's so patriarchal that it seems like the laws are written to keep it almost exasperate the 1950s stereotype of what families were.
If you look in the background at the advertising in the comic, it's literally full of like obey your husband kind of stuff, like
which most of those that you see, that like, oh, here's something from the 1950s, how to make your woman or your wife serve you drinks naked or whatever, are these Photoshop things from like in the last 10 years, and people are just trolling these people. But anyway, I just want to say it was a little bit on the weirder side, this whole idea, but it did have a theme that could be good. I think it's a good-ish theme. I think it could be better. I think if somebody really sat down and put some thought into issues, like, you could really concentrate on the issues. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It seemed like the artist wanted to, and take this however you want. Just at the beginning of this, I'm reading through it, and just a lot of naked women. And I said it earlier, and anybody can get mad at me. Why is it every woman's going to the same groomer? That's my whole thing. I'm like, it's all exactly the same. Which, if you're going to make unique characters, especially when it comes to grooming things, the things that people can take care of, because they all had different haircuts too. Yeah. But that particular grooming thing was all the same, and I thought that was an interesting choice. I didn't know time constraint. I don't know deadline on it, and that might have been part of that. I
don't know either. As I understand it, Kelly Sue DeConnick had got a man to draw the comic, and that might be just a man's interpretation. Or
down the line, you could find out that's what they had to do, which is understandable. Like I said, it was just really interesting right off the bat. But I will tell you, this was the comic itself was it was fun. It was interesting. Mm-hmm. The art was definitely unique. The artist, thumbs up. The art was definitely unique, and probably kept to the properties they were going through. trying to get on that. So if you're looking for a good comic that's going to hit issues that you believe in, and that you identify as a feminist or in feminism at all, I would not put this comic book down. I thought the art was interesting. I thought the story had good premise and stuff on it. Mm-hmm. There was stuff in there that I didn't agree with, but I also thought that the writer was trying to go to full extremes. And that's what it felt like to me, which is fine, because when you want to make a point on that, you do. It didn't draw me in, though, because it was confusing at times. Not because of anything of one of those things. Like I said, the story was good, the writing was decent, the art was actually very unique. But I felt lost in the story at certain points. It was like they introduced it and then had no backup explanation. Like what you said, that whole bait and switch thing. I didn't even notice that. I wasn't getting that from the comic, but I didn't have any premise to that reading the first comic, which, if I did, would have definitely changed my reading and how I felt about the scenario.
Yeah. Well, for me, I have comics I'm planning to make that are, the whole point is because there's something that I care about. It's a message that I feel needs to be told. And so I know I'm totally down with that. It's just that I feel like something that is so extreme as this, like, as a person who would normally be on her side, I don't necessarily agree with extreme feminism, and I don't necessarily agree with extreme masculinism either. Like, guys that are all, it disgusts me just as much when I'm, running into a guy that's all he wants to do is brag about his sexual conquest, as much as if I, run into a raging feminist who hates men. And that's, and the thing is like, this comic, I didn't like it when I first read it. I found it extremely alienating, and, it was obviously not meant for me. And I felt like it doesn't do a very good job of getting people on your side necessarily, unless they already are on your side.
I think I get what you're saying. So just one final thing, and we'll move on to our main one for today. But if you're going to do something, remember, even if you're on an extreme side or the other extreme side, like what Woody was saying, there's extreme sides of these things. By the way, my sexual conquest, same woman, last 12 years. Anyways, come on, that was a good joke. You can laugh at that one, you jerk. Anyways, you got to remember that most people, especially who identify as different groups, will take feminism, because that's what we're talking about with this comic. There's majority of the people falling somewhere in the middle of the road. They're not as extreme as you in certain things too, and you don't want to, especially when you're talking about real problems and bringing up real issues and things that are happening. Don't alienate the people. If you're going to do something like this, don't alienate the people that are on your side. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah. Because at middle of the road, I know quite a few feminists, and I know what their real beliefs are, and I know they probably wouldn't continue reading this comic book either. Yeah. And it's just one of those things.
Yeah. I do want to say real quick that it might be worth picking up the next 4 issues just to see where it goes, and maybe talk about that in a later episode, because I didn't. And the book's really well reviewed. A lot of people love it.
Like I said, the unique story, it's beautifully done when you look at it just from a comic book aspect, and we rate it like we always do, which is the art, story, and mechanism. But anyways, let's get to our number one, because we're cutting short on time, which is Rat Queens. Now, loved it, but that's because I'm a tabletop gamer, and this is totally a tabletop fantasy thing of an all-female group. So you go ahead, because I've got some things I'd like to say on this one, too.
Okay. Well, Rat Queens was a series that made a big splash. I had picked it up because I'd heard it was gamer themed, D&D, that sort of thing, and the first issue did not disappoint. As Doctor said, it's basically an all-female adventuring party. You've got all your classics. You got your cleric, you got your fighter, your wizard, and your thief. But the girls are extremely colorful. They are the exact opposite extreme of Bitch Planet. It's the entire other direction. They basically, when they're not adventuring, they spend their time getting drunk and having sex, but most of them do. But what I find, one of the things that we found very charming about it is they also take a look at the other adventuring groups of the town of Palisades, and there was one of them where the entire team was called Dave. They were all guys named Dave.
That was hilarious. Hold on, I don't mean to interrupt you, because there was it Dave or Fred? Anyway.
Dave. Yeah, it was Orc Dave.
Orc Dave.
Hobbit Dave. And, And there's another interesting character named Braga, who you end up finding out in this one shot later that Braga is actually an Orcish prince who was gay, and ends up like also believes in education and all these things, like everything orcs don't, and ended up basically bailing on their community, on their society, and somewhere along the line got a magical sex change there without any explanation. So, and hasn't told anybody. So that's weird. But I mean, as like, you know, and it would be great if she was always wearing the belt of gender swapping. But that never comes up. So yeah.
I'll tell you, especially when you were telling me that we were doing this and it would be more feminist theme, this is the perfect feminist comic.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is, I don't know where the shift happened, but I think when I think of feminists, I think of female-male equality, and that's what they're fighting for all the time.
Yeah, I agree.
And this is really on that. They had some groups that were mixed male and female. They had some groups that were all male. They had some group, you know, this group in particular is all female. I think there's one other all-female group. And but you're talking about like how they at one point they all wanted to, that you get back from an adventure, they almost die, so now they want to, you know, blow off steam. And I love that switch that no, I'm taking this guy tonight, we're going right now kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I also like that they didn't go like, it wasn't typecasted that way for all the characters. Because there's the one that's overly aggressive, and then she has that on and off relationship with that guy, but then you find out it's because she's a little bit more worried about having the relationship with that guy.
And also revealing too much about herself.
Right.
Because she has a little secret
and
that she's hiding.
And then there's the other one that has a little secret that she's hiding, who doesn't have a relationship at all. And you find further on. I'm not going to ruin that one because that one did catch me off guard. I thought that was pretty good.
The cleric character.
Yeah, and you think that she's just shy. I love that she's a what did she say? A reformed cultist. That was cracking me up the whole time too.
Yeah. Well, there's this other fun thing they do with her where she starts multi-classing as a ranger later in the series, and she's reading this book, Ranger 101, and and starts like carrying a bow and wearing body armor.
I just want to say that this is a great series, and I'm not saying that because I love tabletop. I loved it because it hit issues, real issues. It really tackled real issues. It showed that people can get along, because in that party, it wasn't like the male group and the female group, the all-male group and the all-female group were fighting each other. It was showing that two different instances can get along and that you can have a different idea of what the world should be, but you could still work together for that. I love that about this whole thing.
It's really fun.
Art...
It's absolutely fun to read.
Okay, and I just want to hit these points because they're the ones we always hit for this review show, but the art in this is great. But the reason I love it is not what you would think. I wasn't blown away by the art. The art didn't say, oh my God, like when we talked about Descenders before, where the art blew me away. Right. It's the small details in this that make the characters unique in the story, but they don't change the fact that it felt like a true tabletop game, or what I would experience as like the stereotypical tabletop wizard or cleric, or you know what I mean? Yeah. But it was unique enough that it made the series really unique for me, and I loved every minute of that. One of the other things for me is the story in this. It had some very interesting turns. It really did. Really good writing on this. Considering like the first couple of pages, I was like, oh, here we go. Stereotypical writing for stereotypical tabletop gamer. But it felt different enough to be a unique book and a unique story setting in and of itself. Though some of the quirks seemed to be pushed on, like it didn't feel organic with some of their quirks. It was neat to see that It was neat to see that they followed through with those when you read the next issue with their quirks. Like it wasn't something that just fell off. The tabletop.
Well, I also like, by the way, that they do a good job of setting it all up. Like you have these characters that are quirky and whatever, but then as you read along in the story, everything pays off. They spend a lot of time setting up the backstory of the characters, and they do become organic when you start to see how they ended up the way they are.
No, I'm talking about like just picking up the first couple of issues with that. You're right, absolutely. I should have made that point. And I think I was a little prejudiced when I started reading it. Not prejudiced, but defensive, because as a tabletop guy, and I've been tabletop for a long time, I know what people think. So it always becomes this really weird thing. I've realized that most people who don't like tabletop never played tabletop. They just have the stereotype of tabletop. And I worry because some people do those gamer comic books. I've read a few of them in the past. And it just felt like I'm going to do a story on stereotypes of, and I absolutely hate that.
The Pathfinder comic book series is a classic example of that. It's horrible.
And I like that this was not. It really was not. And there's these unique things happen. There's a tabletop nerd in me that wants to read more of these, but it's because they're interesting to me because I see it from a tabletop thing. And I'll be honest with you, this all-female party, when you originally put this up to me, I want to tell you how hard my eyes rolled. And I'll tell you why. Because I listen to a lot of tabletop podcasts, Real Play and Story Play, because I do one. I watch a lot of tabletop stuff or, where people are gimmicky. And what I mean by gimmicky is, come listen to my podcast, I have an all-gay cast. Or come listen to my podcast, I have an all-female cast.
Yeah.
And very few pay off. I have found some incredible ones out there. The part that always makes it weird for me is the ones that are incredible are not the popular ones in whatever category it is.
Yeah.
And I was scared when you brought this comic book up, when I saw the cover and stuff, because I was like, oh, Jesus, please don't. And I'm so glad you brought the one to me that it did not feel forced. Yeah. And like I said, podcasts, comic streams, etc., sometimes they feel forced. And the sad part is I do a lot of tabletop gaming in the community. I do it, close to home, far away from home, internet. I do a bunch of stuff for a bunch of people. Sure. I know women in tabletop, which is coming up. I just want to put that hashtag women in tabletop out there. But they love the game. They play the game. They know the rules. They're really good at it. And then there's the ones that everybody associates with females in tabletop, which are somebody's sister that wanted to do it once kind of thing.
Yes.
And you worry when you see stuff like this, like, please don't be that stereotype. Please be something good and decent that I could present. And if somebody asks me, I can say, you need to read this.
Yeah. Now, if I can jump in, so one thing I want to mention about the comic series is they had basically the first major arc was really amazing, and then the second arc kind of went in a different direction where the series story got kind of really serious, and it had some really neat twists and turns at the end. But it's like they had this thing where the party basically split, and then the series kind of abruptly ended and came back about a year later, I think. And apparently there was some controversy with one of the creators, and they took a break from the series. And I haven't looked up the controversy. I didn't really want to get into that. I wanted to focus on what was good about the series. But if anybody does want to pick up the comic, it does have an abrupt ending and then begins again. So there is going to be a first and second series. And it's interesting that when it picks up again, like it tonally, it's identical to the way it was at the beginning. And suddenly all the characters are back together, and they never really explain what happened necessarily, but you kind of like just pick it up in context clues. But you can still enjoy the story. Just basically, they handle everything if you just start reading and enjoy it for what it is. And it basically is exactly what you loved about it the first time. So it's certainly, I would strongly recommend just read to the end and then pick up the next issue and keep going. It's just as good.
So, anyways, we're coming up on our last couple of minutes here. Sorry, I haven't been as good today as I normally am.
You enjoyed the book, so
let's go through these. So, your last thoughts on what is it, Doctor? I keep saying it wrong.
Aphra. I think it's pronounced Aphra. I really enjoyed the series. I think I'm enjoying Darth Vader more. But it was a good comic. If you want to read a Star Wars book and you want read about a female main character, I would definitely check it out, and it certainly got me more interested in going back and checking out Vader Down and seeing her original appearance.
Yeah, I haven't seen that. I read that in that, but again, time constraints, and I really got hooked on the Rat Queens. Bitch Planet, we kind of know, but give me your last thoughts.
Good God, I think it's definitely a recommend for girls. I don't know if I'd recommend it to a guy, but I think I probably am going to pick up the next 4 issues at some point. Have Claire on, when she couldn't make it today, and then get really see if the series improves or gets more interesting.
Yeah, and the last one for you, Rat Queens.
Oh my God, this is like one of my favorite comic books. I was so excited when it came back. I would recommend this one to anybody. If like, you know, if you're into tabletop gaming, you know, like D&D or any of those games, read this book. It's definitely written for you.
Speaking of which, we just released an episode today of Bros and Dragons podcast. Check us out there. For Woody and Alex, even though he's not here, we'll plug a little bit because they kind of do the same thing together anyways. Check out ConwayTheSeries.com, and I recommend ThunderFrogTheSeries.com. I know Conway the Series is new one you're pushing, but I love Thunderfrog.
Yeah. Well, I will say that we're actually in the process of doing, we're kind of going back, doing a little bit of a episode 1, basically a George Lucas, where we're going to like tightening up a few things with the art that didn't quite work the first time. It's good. Anyways, we're basically doing a spicing up the first graphic novel and getting ready to put it in color. And then the second graphic novel, I've actually just got the first few pages of it, and we'll be releasing the next one in color in a few months.
All right.
So
you got
content's coming.
Yeah, a lot to look for. That's awesome. As always, read more comics, keep it nerdy, and live your dreams.